danger, which he has placed the scene at. It's almost suggesting an unsteady perch for the artist viewer who's about to topple off into the putter. Passage through of the Potomac through the Blue Mountains is slightly less dramatic on the surface. It appears at first glance that there's a sense of balance there between the two large masses of land, but then you have this rakish angle of the tree in the foreground that really starts to unsteady everything there. It's of the present-day Harper's Ferry, where West Virginia, Virginia, and Maryland come together, and where the two rivers, the Shenandoah and the Potomac, come together. If you try to follow the river into the distance, it's complicated by all these rocky obstructions. And then as you get there, rather than the river gliding off gently, you have the two cliffs that are seen to be closing in and obstructing its passage. This is exactly the scene that captivated Jefferson's attention in his notes on the state of Virginia. He called it stupendous when he saw it, a testament to the ancient war between rivers and mountains, one in which the two rivers, in quest of passage, rush together against the mountain, rend it asunder, and pass off to the sea. His breathless description may well have influenced Beck in the scene here, though we think Washington also knew this scene from personal experience. And you see here a 1754 drawing he did of where the two rivers come together at the top, and then those little hatch marks are the rapids of the Shenandoah Falls below. He had visited in 1754 and then again in 1785 when he returned with the directors of the Potomac Canal to decide the best means of navigating that section of the river. So for Washington, these portraits of the Potomac sent multiple messages. On the one hand, they spoke to the awe-inspiring natural power of this river and the uncultivated majesty of the land, but they also argued for the potential of the Potomac and its development, its importance to the nation's future, in which it would be Western market sizes. And you see here a selection of a few of those that we know from the list. A number of them were colored, and a few that were just coming out. They were landscape, seascape, mythological subjects, but there were also a few inoffensive pieces of British history. You see the depiction of King Alfred sharing. There were after his death, and Washington sent an agent to acquire what he could there. These are all works after Lorraine, the recognized master of landscape painting, and they would have witnessed certainly to Washington's cultivated taste, but they also harmonized with his preference for the pastoral, peaceful, rural lifestyle. And they suggested a continuity between the classical past and Washington's collection presented a noteworthy contrast to the art collections in elite homes throughout the city, which in the traditional manner were constructed around works by recognized old masters to showcase the owner's urbanity and wealth, rather than professing an ideological viewpoint. William Hamilton's was the most extensively developed. Hamilton was and had first met Washington in the 1770s. They both shared a love of gardening and architecture as well as art, and exchanged ideas for the development of their estates. At Woodlands, Hamilton's country estate that he had just finished in the 1790s, he housed his collection of art, which included several notable sculptures, marble and bronze, as well as a number of these old masters. There's also a copy of Titian's flesh offended a number of people, and they were kept under drapes in the second floor bedchambers, not uncommon view. As the final days of Washington's presidency approached then, the news that Washington would be selling his furnishings and possibly his paintings and prints got around and generated great interest in the sale. But the paintings and prints were in fact not for sale. They'd never been advertised to do so. He had always envisioned them returning to Mount Vernon, and particularly to the empty New Room. His installations at home in Mount Vernon would bring into sharper focus the unique character of his collection. Shortly after his arrival in March 1797, Washington described his unsettled situation. "We're like the beginners of a new establishment, having everything in a manner to do, rooms to paint, paper, whitewash, etc., etc." And by the next summer, it seems that most of the principal works in his collection at the time had been hung. The most densely hung spaces were naturally the most visible public rooms: the central passage, the west parlor, the small dining room, and the new room. And you may have gotten a taste of those last night, and it's those that I'm going to focus on today in our limited time. In the central passage, you had framed, but they were also joined natural history specimens. As with Jefferson's called Washington's influence and the influence of the American Revolution in ushering in this new order of liberty over the old world's despotism. Set then in between these classical landscapes, they almost suggested that America's present was in fact a new golden age of history. The West Parlor was a more traditional assemblage of family portraits. But also here, extending the bounds of the family, was a portrait of the Lafayette family that had been a personal gift from him. Unfortunately, it no longer survives. We have a contemporary description that mentions that it was in terrible condition. According to the Polish visitor, Julian Niemczewicz, the paint was flaking from it, and there were large cuts in the canvas that had left the marquise and one of her daughters without an eye, and then the other daughter had lost a nose. So that probably explains why we don't have it today. Then in the dining room, Washington presented what Wendy Reeves, who first studied this collection, aptly called a gallery of American achievement. He displayed some of the finest compositions of Americopoli and science, such as David Rittenhouse and Benjamin Franklin, and then American heroes, including his compatriots, Nathaniel Greene. The magnificent new room, though, on the other end of the house, was the destination space and the principal art gallery. It was usually seen by visitors before they had met Washington, and as the culmination of the whole collection, it spoke powerfully to his vision and his plated window, which was perfect for showcasing the grand landscape canvases. The architectural constraints suggest that all of the landscapes were hung on the highest register of the room, over the doorways. Traditional wisdom would have said that this space was most appropriate for the morally more significant history paintings of biblical and classical subjects. But instead, Washington had chosen to commission and to collect paintings. He'd inverted the moral hierarchy, exalting the land as emblematic of national pride and potential. There were American history paintings at that point. These, by the death of General Montgomery at Quebec, had been painted in the mid-1780s, but Trumbull had held on to them in the hopes of, like West, acquiring his fortune through sales. And Washington in his project, and Washington enthusiastically would write to friends and associates, including Lafayette, in an effort to encourage his project. He believed he will do much honor to the liberal art of painting, as well as credit this to his native country. But difficulties finding the engraver and subscriber slowed the project. In the meantime, Jefferson, like Washington had done, tried to interest Trumbull in landscape painting as an alternative. He referenced the natural bridge and appealed to him, "Take to yourself and your country the honor of presenting to the world this singular landscape, which otherwise some bungling European will misrepresent." But Trumbull declined and continued to pursue. He would eventually return to painting Niagara Falls in the 1800s, but this would never be his forte. Interestingly enough, though, he would have the honor of discovering At last then, in 1798, the engravings were nearing completion. Washington had enthusiastically pledged money for 4 to Washington in March, and they were hung in the new room by June. So enthralled was Washington with the pictures that when the original sets, sterile, another was kept as a gift for friends. So really summed up the importance of these images to the founding generation. She said, "Trumbull in these teaches mankind that is not race." This is a very different American theme. Trumbull's Washington at Verplanck's Point, and thought to be, by her, one of the best likenesses of Washington. It was also joined by a portrait, a state portrait,